I will officially call our meeting to order. I've got a few comments I will make before turning it over to the President, but first I'd like to welcome a few guests that we have. Sarah Kleiner, who's behind me to the left from the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Jonathan Costin from WRIC TV. And Jim Bacon from Bacon's Rebellion, a well-published blog. And I think that completes the list. We have a busy agenda before us. All of you have had an opportunity to take a look at that. We need formal consideration of that agenda, so may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? So moved. We also have minutes from our March 22nd and April 6th meetings. And I, again, trust that everyone has had a chance to go through those. If there are no additions or corrections, seeing no hands raised, may I have a motion to approve those? Is there a second? All in favor? So moved. This is a very busy time of the year for the VCU community. While things are winding down quickly, it's been busy for students, faculty, and staff, and certainly for this board, which is why we're starting about 20-25 minutes late, but all for a very, very good cause. As we look at the activities that are underway, I would just like to reference one that I had the great pleasure of participating in, and that is the fashion show on Wednesday evening. And I do so because it was a wonderful event. It was fun. It was a learning opportunity for me and exposed me to a whole different dimension of the many great things that are going on at VCU. I would also note that our own Holly Alford played a major role in not only teaching through the year, but in having her students, seniors, be very much a part of that. Kudos as well to James Frazier, the interim dean, to Patricia Brown, the chair of the department, who is not here, but also the leadership from Qatar, whom we'll hear from a little bit later. So it was just a great event and a great evening, and one of many that signified the conclusion of a great academic year here at VCU. Speaking of that, it is an exciting time as we do wrap things up. We've got graduation events today and tomorrow. There will be some 5,500 students graduating tomorrow, receiving recognition for their important accomplishments. And as they do, they will, at least those who attend the formal graduation, will enjoy congratulatory words and I'm sure sound counsel from our speaker tomorrow, Senator Tim Kaine. We have a full agenda before us. You, again, have approved that and seen that, but before turning to that, I'll turn to our President, Mike Rao, for some comments. Mike?
Great. Thank you, John, and I look forward to a great meeting today. There were some really good conversations in the committee meetings, and they have, without a question, shaped considerably some of the things that I wanted to share with you in terms of updates. I find the conversations in the committee meetings very, very helpful because fundamentally what they're doing is they're really focusing on a lot of the changes that we see generally in society. And of course, the needs of people are changing as people change. And what we're really focused on as one of the three major research universities in the Commonwealth of Virginia is a research university model that really is connected to the society that is changing and the changes that it brings with it. So realistically, we've got to continue to consider a lot of what was discussed in the Academic and Health Affairs Committee, which was where are the resources going to come from in order to support the mission of this institution, particularly as it does become that model research university that so many research universities, frankly and candidly, are having a tough time making changes to adapt to. A lot of these pieces are really some heavy lifts that aren't terribly visible, but I wanted to give you some updates and give you a picture of what's going on. So much of what we're talking about is really the means by which we get to the end, which is the success of our students, the success of our faculty and staff in supporting and serving our students. And to do that, we've got to be certain that the resources are in the right place. One of the reports that you'll get today in your full board meeting is a report that will give you an update on the Diversity and Inclusion Strategic Action Plan. We're very proud that we are, of course, the most diverse university in the Commonwealth of Virginia among the publics, and there's no question that what this plan will do is clarify the roles that we all have in helping to advance diversity, but maybe more importantly, helping to advance inclusion, something that I think society is more generally struggling with. And our focus is going to be on all of the areas that Roz tells you about, but specifically, one of the things that I'm most committed to being certain is that we not only recruit, but that we also retain and support the people who bring the kind of diversity to this institution that we think becomes an ideal microcosm for people leaving this institution as learners going out into the world to lead. They will have skills that many people from other institutions that aren't as diverse may not have, and that to us is a tremendous edge. Carol Gray did a great job today of providing an update on the budget redesign. I was really pleased that you could give an update to the board, at least to that committee, particularly in light of the conversations that we've had around being able to nimbly direct resources that need to be directed to the strategic priorities that we have outlined. And I specifically appreciate that you have made the kind of progress that you have in such a short period of time. And has it been about a year? It has indeed been a year, and in 1 year you have made speed of light progress with this, and we're very, very grateful to you and to Gail and to Marcia for the leadership that you have provided to that. One of the things that I also appreciate is that you talked about the entrepreneurial aspect of this and how this will generate revenues and resources that we don't have. The other thing we talked about, of course, is the transparency that it brings and the support that that transparency brings to our understanding of how this large, complex budget works and operates. One of the other reports that you will get today is an update on a VCU-based human resources system. Again, the focus there is really viewing human resources, our people, our team, as a strategic resource in every category. We also wanted to do that. We also want to be certain that people see clear pathways. They know how to advance and how to move forward at Virginia Commonwealth University from any level, and from any level, they know how to contribute to the mission of this organization. And so I'm looking forward to that report. I should mention to you, with some gratitude for Susan Karkeek and Kathleen Burke for their great work on this. This is a monumental lift, right? Think about it. In all of the existence of this institution and even its predecessor institutions, nothing really has changed because it was fundamentally a state agency. And of course, we continue to respect our relationship being a member of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Nonetheless, we are a university. And so among the Tier 3 institutions, Tier 3 is that category when the state decided to do restructuring of higher education. It was the top category. University of Virginia is in that, William and Mary's in that, Virginia Tech, and VCU. So those are the 4 institutions in that category. We were the only one that did not implement a VCU-based system of human resources. And of course, it's the last thing that we haven't implemented out of Tier 3. So we're bringing that to some closure. Although what Susan will present to you is the structure. The bottom line is she's also going to tell you that there's a lot of work yet to do. The other thing I should mention, Deborah and Marcia, is that VCU Health is very much doing the same thing. We are restructuring our human resources system in our healthcare environment as well at VCU. And specifically speaking of VCU Health, I wanted to give you a quick update on Vision by Design. Just a reminder, vision by design sounds like some words, but what it's really all about is focusing on our healthcare mission, which obviously supports our research and teaching missions and certainly our service mission as well. But what it's really about is better care more efficiently and sustainably aligned to our missions of education and research. Better care. And so that's a big deal because we were just doing our budget development on Tuesday or something like that this week. All these days run together. What I can remember is that next year, the health system alone, we're going to be a $3.5 billion budget. You put it all together, we'll be almost a $4.7 billion institution. That's very significant. And being that significant, we've obviously got to pay attention to where we're headed. So, and the alignment. Marcia's always reminding us of the importance of that alignment. To do that, we've got to deal with some very big issues. Remember, we do have significant resources. We just have to be sure that we are leveraging them the right ways, and we have to be sure that those resources that we have are being directed toward the priorities that are most important to us and our mission and how people are changing and how that changes our mission's commitment to people. It's a lot of words, but I hope you understand that what I'm fundamentally saying is that we know we play a role in shaping society. We've got to be sure that we're changing with society as it changes. And so with this $3.5 billion operation, we've got to take a very close look at revenues and whether or not they're coming in as rapidly as they could be coming in. It's obviously a very large healthcare business, and we've got to be certain that our payers of all types are paying in ways that work for them and work for us. We've got to manage our supply chain, we know that, and we certainly have to take a close look at clinical programs and people. And again, those alignments, but those alignments specifically to the core of our mission, which is research, that part of our organization, which is about causes and cures. I mean, remember, this is an organization, I'm going to only give you one example, and I'm going to pick it randomly because it's the thing that's in my head, is this is the institution that discovered a protocol through an emergency physician and a cardiologist at VCU, both of whom are professors at VCU. We started cooling bodies when they went into stroke or other cardiovascular types of shock. And the bottom line is anything we can do to preserve the brain and reduce the brain's requirement for oxygen is going to save a life, right? That happened at VCU, and it's now spread throughout the entire world. That is the protocol for taking care of people who are on that kind of critical care condition and need their lives saved before they can get more care than that. Yesterday, we had a great campaign steering committee meeting. Really simply, here to report that we are very much on track to meet our $750 million goal. In fact, currently we're a bit ahead of that goal, and we want to stay in that position. The other piece of good news is that more alumni are giving to this campaign than we have ever had give to this campaign, and I'm really proud of our alumni stepping up. The largest increase in participation in this campaign continues to be alumni, and we're really, really pleased with that. About a year ago, you might remember that this board talked about something called VCIMCO, which stands for the Virginia Commonwealth University Investment Management Corporation. This was an entity that the board really wanted to create in order to be sure that our resources were moving in the right direction and that we could control costs as much as possible in the management of those resources and, of course, get the best possible return by combining resources into large funds that would help us to attract the very best managers from around the country. So, it was December when we had an update on this, and you challenged us to figure out how to get VCIMCO to $1 billion, and I'm pleased to report to you that VCIMCO is at $1 billion. I'm also going to have to tell you that that's not free money. It's not a random strategic investment fund that we have. All of those resources, albeit that they will be managed in the best possible way, with the best possible return, most of those resources are restricted to purposes for which donors have outlined, and we will continue to honor that, obviously. But nonetheless, we want these resources to produce and be leveraged as much as possible for the benefit of the university. I also want to tell you that at the end of the year here, I'm feeling really good following a really interesting legislative session with the Commonwealth of Virginia. I feel really good about our state partners. Governor McAuliffe continues to be a great partner. He was actually physically, personally present at the groundbreaking that we had for the Allied Health Professions building about 2 weeks ago. He just continues to understand VCU and where it fits among the research universities, and understands the resource that it is as a Commonwealth-wide entity. By the way, you probably might remember, and he certainly did remember and said at this groundbreaking, that VCU's impact is $6 billion on the Commonwealth of Virginia, attributed to 63,000 jobs, and for every dollar invested, $3.20 returned. We're really proud of that. Speaking of buildings, since I mentioned Allied Health Professions, I could go through a long list, which I will not. You can see as you go through town how much is going on with regard to capital construction and activity in that arena. But I did want to mention that I'm really pleased that we're making such great progress in the design of our engineering research facility, which again takes us to the next level in engineering research, much of which, as you know, has been geared toward pharmaceutical engineering and certainly bioengineering as well. I also want to tell you that we're making really good progress with the adult ambulatory facility. That is about ready to make the next move, and we'll have more for you on that in the next few months. 5 of you are on the health system board, and you'll hear more in our next meeting. But I'm really proud of that, really pleased with that, because that becomes the second major linchpin in smoothing out the pattern of traffic and the ingress and egress that we have on a very tight spot for one of the nation's great medical centers. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention to you how grateful I am to the legislature for a wonderful working relationship. We have great leadership in the legislature in both houses, and I'm really, really pleased that that has produced such great results for VCU, given our mission, given our student population at the undergraduate level in particular. They have been so wonderful about continuing to support my requests, my top 2 requests in particular, one being student financial assistance, and the other being faculty and staff performance-based compensation. So I'm really pleased with that. Look back over at Carol and remind myself that, and all of you, that today Carol made a great presentation on a complex budget to the Finance, Budget, and Investment Committee today. She's going to give you an abbreviated version of that. I've asked her to tell the whole board a little bit of that story so that that can be discussed here. Because what comes with that is a couple of things. One is that despite the fact that this is a year in which our appropriation, again, is being cut, and I think it's important to remember that, it is also very important for us to do what I propose to be a 3% on average salary or compensation adjustment for our faculty and staff. I think it's essential that that be done, and we have included that in the budget as well. It includes, as you know, everyone seems to know, and I'm pleased that they do, a modest 3.8% tuition and fee increase, and in the end, it will still apply a $3.8 million reduction that will have to be addressed before the budget year begins. I, of course, you'll see this when Carol talks later, have added an additional $3 million from our appropriated base into student financial assistance, and we'll get more into that as we talk further in Carol's and Bill's session. This is one of those times, by the way, where it's important for you to remember that part of what we're doing in putting a budget together is we're doing it as efficiently as we possibly can, but we're doing it probably and hopefully one of the last years the old way. Ultimately, our new budget structure is going to make it easier for us to target resources in directions that we know will be critical to strategic priorities. Right now, that's much, much harder, but we're trying to achieve that balance nonetheless. I want to thank the students who were involved working directly with Carol in about 4 or 5 sessions, 3 sessions in the 4, plus the workshop in the course of the year. Very helpful input. I also want to thank our faculty and staff for all of their support along the year, throughout the year, in helping us with regard to all of the initiatives that, again, they're heavy lifts. They're not really visible, they're not very exciting, but they are fundamental to being able to do a lot of the things that this board has continued to talk with me about that we need to do in order to make certain that the university changes and is nimble. I would be remiss if I didn't go back and say thank you to this leadership team. This is the strongest leadership team I have ever worked with in my career, and I am very, very grateful to all of you for everything that you have made happen this year. Meredith, you're going to present the 6-year capital plan. And I don't mind saying that this is the most confidence I have ever had in submitting a capital plan, because I know now, I now know how much we have and where we have significant gaps. So I could do that about every one of the people at this table, but that would probably go on too long. Every one of you will have an opportunity to speak and connect with the board, and when you do, we'll try to tell your story. This is the end of the year, and so as it goes with the structure under which the universities are created, we have 4 gubernatorial appointments each year. And this is for 4 of you, the fulfillment of your first terms. And so I want to specifically thank Steve Worley and Rick Wagoner, Tyrone Nelson, and John Snow. So undoubtedly, some of you will be reappointed. Undoubtedly, some of you will not seek to be reappointed, and we respect that. But I do want to say, and I'm going to look at you, John Snow. Thank you for the honor of working together with you, learning with you. I want to thank you personally for being a mentor to me, for hitting me right in the head when I needed to be hit in the head with truths that I needed to hear from time to time. You've been great, and we will miss you tremendously. I'm not going to say all of that about the others because they are seeking reappointment, and I assume that you will be reappointed, and I look forward to working together with you some more. And, I should say, Rick, you also hit me in the head once in a while, so thank you for that, too, I think. This is that meeting, too, when we have that transition. Later on, I'm going to offer for the board's consideration some student representatives for next year. And so, Beth and Alan, thank you very much. You have been deeply engaged in the life of the university, but certainly in the governance of the institution. You've been great informers of what's really going on. You've also been incredibly civil participants. You are model students, both of you, and you in so many ways represent so many of the VCU students in the ways in which you have been so thoughtful about not just representing yourselves, but really thinking about how do you represent the entire student population. And I know that for a fact because there were several occasions on which you brought issues to me when I knew that they were really issues that you didn't as much care about personally as you knew the student population did. You did your jobs, and you did it well, and you're strong leaders, effective leaders, and not to mention how articulate and just incredibly brilliant you both are. Thank you so much for a great job this year, and I'll look forward to continuing. Alan's actually going to be here 5 more years. He's going to dental school. And Beth is here for another 2. So we'll see more of you, but thank you, thank you. You've been great. And we know that those who will follow you, and I'll introduce them a little later when I make my proposal to the board, they're going to do just as well because I actually happen to know them as well. The leadership in our student population, by the way, is just unbelievable. They challenge us, they teach us, they bring us along, they connect us to what's going on in the world. We have incredible student leadership, and I'm really proud of them. It really keeps my blood flowing. I also want to say specifically thank you to June Nicholson, and this is, I believe, June's, or Holly. So
June is moving off of the board.
And Holly.
I am moving on to the board.
And I'll be proposing you. But since I don't see June, maybe what I was going to say is maybe you could carry back for June my message of gratitude. And Sonia, I can thank you directly right here since you're here. We'll have more discussion as we go into each of the items that we have carefully thought through and putting the agenda together. But if you have any specific questions at this point in time, I'd be pleased to give you short replies. All right, great, thanks.
Mike, thanks very much. We will turn to the various presentations we have and begin with Diversity and Inclusion, the Strategic Action Plan. Dr. Rosalind Hobson-Hargraves.
Great. So I will, if you are, can you hear me okay? Because I'll stay over here so I can advance and I have a microphone. So as necessary, I will come out and talk with you, but I'm going to sort of hang back here so I can advance my slides. It's my pleasure to be with you here this afternoon. I'm standing before you on behalf of our Interim Vice President for Inclusive Excellence, Dr. Kevin Allison. I'm here to present the Diversity and Inclusion Strategic Action Plan. In many ways, I'm not only representative of Dr. Allison, I'm also representing the Council for Inclusive Excellence and Equity. They are the 24-member body made up of representation from the various business and academic units, along with student representation, who crafted the plan that you have in your packet. I'm especially appreciative to those members, and we have a number of members of the council here with us. They have done an amazing work in putting this together. In the development of the plan, they consulted with various constituent groups. They consulted with faculty senate, staff senate. They consulted with experts in the field. We presented to SGA, so had open forums in the development of the plan to gather information. We gathered information from the climate survey, from student surveys that we put out, all of this in the creation of the plan. Once the draft was created, I came and presented it last December to the Academic and Health Affairs Committee of the board. It also went back out to all those constituent groups. It was posted for public comment for a period. We took all that information back. The council then revised the plan and came up with the document you have before you. So thank you. If any members of the council would like to wave their hands, I really, really appreciate all the work that you did, and some of them are here and around the room. So I won't go through all 13 goals and various initiatives that are within the plan. I will give you kind of a high-level overview and then a deep dive in a couple of areas that I think demonstrate the type of initiatives we have included. So the plan is comprised of 4 thematic areas: institutional commitment, climate and intergroup relations, recruitment, retention and success, and education, scholarship, and research. We also have an assessment plan that is integral to the success of the plan. And all of the themes we have are really, although they are distinct, they are really interrelated. So, for example, under our institutional commitment theme, we have one initiative that has laid out action to incorporate diversity and inclusion goals in the VCU strategic planning and policy development process. So that initiative is already being put into action. The Academic Health Affairs Committee has been receiving updates on our progress in developing the new university strategic plan, and in the development process, we actually have a work group, one of 5 work groups. We have 5 work groups, one of which is leveraging diversity. So as you can see, we're actually putting into action an initiative that we had identified. In terms of, and President Rao alluded to this early, under recruitment, retention, and success, it's not just the recruitment, retention, and success of our students, it's also of our faculty and staff. And so one of the initiatives under there speaks to strengthening our student and academic support programs for our students. So that includes advising, mentoring, and so we have already been making investments in our student advising program. In terms of another initiative under that thematic area of recruitment and retention and success, we have professional development and advancement opportunities for our faculty and staff. Well, we're seeing that manifested already in the work that's being done in the Provost's office under our Senior Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs in the development of a mentoring program for our faculty. In addition, we see that in the work that Susan Carkeet has been doing with the HR redesign process with actually determining career paths for career development paths or career paths for staff development. So we see that the themes, the goals, the initiatives, we are already putting into action. To keep us on track, to making sure that we are really achieving what we had said that we wanted to do, we have established this assessment process. So if you noticed in the plan, each of the initiatives has a metric associated with it and a responsible unit. And so with all of those metrics, this summer we will be identifying what our baseline measures are for each of those metrics and identifying what kind of targets we want to have for each of the areas and where our gaps are and what kinds, how we have to move forward in achieving, or what the difference is between where we are and where we want to be. Throughout the assessment process, we'll be getting information like from climate surveys of our faculty and staff, student survey, for example, the National Survey of Student Engagement. We'll also be looking at basic data that we have access through the Office of OPDS, Office of Planning and Decision Support, data on our faculty, data on our staff, data on our students, looking at trend lines, how are we doing? Are we making progress? And then as an engineer, I like to take the results that we have and go back and say, okay, well, where are we? How can we move forward? This is a design process, it's iterative. So what happens is we need to see where we are, where we want to be, and do we have to go back and make some adjustments in order to achieve continuous improvement? One of the things I'm most proud of is the way this plan is being already integrated. I mentioned how we're integrating it into the university's strategic planning process. We've talked about how even some of the initiatives are already manifesting themselves in the HR redesign process. But to elaborate on that a little more, diversity happens to be one of the core competencies within the new HR redesign, so the HR policies. And then we also have our health equity plan, which is on the health sciences campus, which is really focused on equity and social determinants of health. So these plans, the strategic plan, the HR redesign, the health equity plan, the diversity inclusion strategic action plan, are really charting our path forward as an institution. And I'm really proud that we have a direction for us to move in. So in terms of accountability, as I mentioned, each of the themes, each of the goals have responsible parties. We'll be engaging with each of those responsible units to see how we're making progress on achieving the goals. We also have two councils that I think are especially relevant. We have our Inclusive Learning Council, which I've referred to up here as the Inclusive Learning Coordinating Body. That has representation from academic units across the university. And on that Inclusive Learning Council are representatives. Typically, they might be someone from their diversity committee or someone who is charged with handling issues around diversity and inclusion within that unit. For example, Holly Alford is the Director of Diversity in the School of the Arts, and she's on that committee. So they are the committee that's charged with reporting. They generate annual reports each year on their progress they're making in the unit, and they will be responsible for kind of filtering the plan down to the academic units in ways in which possibly the VPs will oversee, but they will actually put into action. We also have the continued work of the council. They don't get a break. They produce this wonderful plan, but they have to continue working because they'll be one of the bodies responsible for really looking at our metrics, looking at how we're doing, and moving us forward, and checking to see how we're doing in terms of progress. So, with that, that concludes my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Excellent. Are there questions? Yes, Bill.
More of a comment. I can't tell you how proud I am of this. Your presentation is not itself.
Thank you.
It's really, really excellent. Please pass that along to everybody who was involved. It was obviously a really great group effort. You're a wonderful spokesman for it, but it was a great group effort. It is a complete plan with true action plans and dates and specifics and all those kinds of things, which I personally like to see. I would suggest, John and Phoebe, that as we look at next year and organize ourselves as a board next year, it would be important for us to make sure that there is a committee that has a responsibility now for following this along with this plan. I don't know if that's governance or academic and health and that type of thing, but I think it's important that this was not a one-time event where we had a bunch of students who came and talked to us, and Dr. Rao put a plan in place, and a lot of great people put a plan in place. I think the board needs to make sure that this also doesn't get lost and that we're staying on track, and that it should be a regular part of the reporting that comes to the board. So I would just suggest as the year unfolds.
Excellent point. I think it really does reflect tremendous progress, tremendous engagement, tremendous opportunity.
And very short.
Holly, delighted to hear of your involvement, and yet something else. You're great. And I think that's an excellent suggestion in terms of a subcommittee, perhaps. But one of the things that, subject to the approval of the board, that will ensure that this becomes a topic of routine, regular conversation, is that we need to approve the plan for 2017 through 2022. But before we do that, are there other questions or comments? Yes, Keith.
The first applaud the entire effort of the program was fantastic. Two questions, and if you covered them and I missed it somehow, I apologize in advance for that as well. The accountability component, would these be a piece of the performance evaluations of the respective deans and so forth?
Good, Marcia. I'll defer to the VPs who they report to.
And it's not just numbers, but it's examining all different aspects as you have laid out in your plan, the environment and how we approach recruitment and different things like that, participation in the IQ project. And so it's definitely part of the performance evaluation for our deans. Am I fair to say that for yours too? Yeah.
Wonderful. So the second part would be in the vendor community. As a piece of creating diversity and inclusion, obviously, having more products and services from a broader population or broader universe of potential vendors. Is that a piece of this plan, or does this plan touch on it, or I'll just leave it there?
So I'm going to defer somewhat to Carol on that side.
I want to make sure I understand your question, Keith. We have to participate in a program that demonstrates that we're actively doing business with minority women-owned businesses, and I think VCU's numbers, and if I had them in front of me, I would definitely share them with you, have exceeded the goals over the last 2 to 3 years, and I'd be happy to bring those numbers to you at our next board meeting.
Great, that would be useful, but just for clarity,
Right.
this is now outside of your scope, so the component that you're working on does not include the procurement and vendor component.
Right.
Okay.
And what I think, though, where it would fall under would be our institutional commitment. If you think about a thematic area, that it would make sense that we make this commitment to making sure we adhere to kind of the policies and procedures that we've laid out. But in looking at that, as we go through and look at all of our university policies and procedures, we want to make sure that diversity and inclusion is a part of the conversation and a part of consideration.
But Keith,
Might I add something to that? So that is exactly one of the performance measures for our leadership of our health system, to look at what is the opportunities for vendors that we engage with. And we did especially well with that in the Children's Pavilion building. And I think it was 27% of our different contracts were with minority and women-owned businesses. So that, we've set that out as a specific performance evaluation marker for how well we're doing in this.
so Keith raises an important point, and I think that it's fair to say from the standpoint of the presidency that this really is not designed to be a plan over here and everything else operates over here. It has to come together, and it is expected to come together, and it will be part of my evaluation of my team, and I expect that that will probably transmit to others. So just so that you know, the governor sets this goal, and the goal is set at around 42%, by the way, and we have beat it or met it every year.
That's great to know.
Ben?
I would just say that that's quite an achievement in terms of comparison to other parts of state government, because I don't believe there are many agencies that have met it.
Thank you. Anything else? As I mentioned a moment ago, we do need to formally consider the 2017-2022 Diversity and Inclusion Strategic Action Plan. Have a motion to approve. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Enthusiastic vote. All in favor, unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We will now turn to the aforementioned Susan Karkik, who will talk to us about the HR redesign project. Susan.
Good afternoon. Rosalind's a tough act to follow here, but we'll do our best. Well done. Yes, and I as Rosalind, would be remiss if I didn't start by thanking all the people that have been involved in this work. I have an awesome project team that does all the heavy lifting to bring us this far. Kathleen Berg, that President Rao mentioned, has been a terrific partner. And then my colleagues on the cabinet who form our steering committee have been great advocates and champions, and I want to particularly thank Meredith Weiss, who's been fabulous all along the way. So there's a lot of people behind the scenes. I get to be up front here and talk about it, but I did want you to know that it's been a very collaborative effort. This slide is one that you've seen before. I've used it in my 2 previous reports to the board just to keep us accountable. You all know that this is being done under the Tier 3 restructuring, and as President Rao said, we're the only Tier 3 institution that hasn't done their HR restructuring. And for VCU, the HR piece is the only part of the Tier 3 restructuring that we haven't embarked on. So long overdue, and we're excited to be able to talk with you about it today. The programmatic areas that are listed on the left-hand slide came from our Great Place Initiative survey. So this is what our employees said was needed in order for VCU to really be the great place that we want it to be. And those make up the specific project components of our project. On the right-hand side, though, are the strategic approaches that we've taken. And again, this represents, as Dr. Rao was saying, how do we align our resources with our strategic priorities? And we're doing that through our goal setting and career community structure. Ultimately, our goal is to be a great place to work, and we think by bringing all this together, we will accomplish that goal. The timeline that goes across the bottom shows that over this last year, we've spent most of our time on research and design. There have been about 100 employees working on 9 different committees that have done the best practice research that's gotten us to this point. We have our report here to you today on the schedule as planned, and we're looking for a January 1, 2018 effective date. That's an important milestone because in the legislation, we can only make it effective on January 1 of any given year. So if we miss 2018, it's another year away before we can move forward. So that's kept us focused on being very organized and making sure that we meet all of our deliverables. So the second slide, I'll start on the right. It describes the process that we've been through in developing our policies. Lots of stakeholder groups that have been involved. And I mentioned before all the committees that did the original draft. Then we submitted the policy for a stakeholder review. We've been working with Faculty Senate and Staff Senate executive committees, our deans and associate deans, and ultimately came up with a policy that we submitted for an open comment period. And I'll switch to the left side of the slide to tell you a little bit more about that comment period. It ran between February 17th to March 17th, and we had great engagement around the university community, getting lots of feedback on that. Many thoughtful comments, constructive comments. We did our best to read and address every single one of them, but I think the statistic I'm most proud of is the one that says of the actionable comments that we received, the committees agreed with 81% of the suggestions that were made, and so the policy went through fairly significant revisions. So back on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see we sent those comments back to our subcommittees. They went through the advisory committee. We held focus groups to actually get to the final policy that is moving forward now for final review and approval. My next slide is what we call our honeycomb, and this is a way to show how all of the individual pieces of the policy come together. There are actually 9 specific sections within the policy, and they're represented here. I won't go through all of them. I did try to include more material in your board reports, so you could learn more about the specifics there. But I think what you'll see reflected is our attempt to keep the things that people like about being a state employee, the state retirement, the state health benefits, the kind of job security that comes with public employment, and then wrap around that some of the more modern, state-of-the-art HR practices that the employees asked us for in the Great Place Initiative survey. So you've heard about career paths, career development, a more modern leave plan, market-based and merit-based pay raises. So those are the enhancements that we'll see. And when I talk to employees about this particular slide, what I like to say is, well, all the pieces of the honeycomb are important. The real sweet sauce is the honey in between, and it's really how they all come together that we're excited about, that would really create that kind of great place work environment. And my last slide is what comes next. So there is still a lot of work to be done. I know, at least in the Academic and Health Affairs Committee, there was some concerns raised about the financing behind this plan. I do want you to know that we have looked at that very carefully, that the one piece of the project that we had proposed that would cost money that we didn't think we had, or at least wouldn't want to allocate, was on the leave plan, and we did roll those provisions back. So when we say this is cost neutral, it is truly cost neutral. We're expecting managers to manage within their existing budgets. And while we can provide the tools for this, the assumption is that managers will manage these within their existing budgets. And probably the best example I could give you is this 3% salary raise. So when you allocate or hopefully approve the budget here with a 3% salary increase, for the faculty, that 3% will create a merit pool, and individual people will get different increases based on their performance. In the classified staff world, that 3% is mandated by the state to go across the board. In the future, as we have this new employee category in our new HR plan, that 3% pool for staff would also be a merit pool. So it's the same pool of money, but just allocated on the basis of merit. And so when we talk about doing this within existing budgets, that's an example of how that would work. So hopefully that's helpful. But anyway, between now and our go-live date, we've got a lot of procedures and resources and training to develop. We'll be reviewing and allocating positions into the new career paths and market ranges. We have a software implementation to put in the cascading goals functionality in our performance management program. And we're also implementing a new learning management system for employees to be able to track our career development activity. Come January 1, that will be the effective date for all new hires since July 1 of 2016. We expect several hundred employees to come with us into the new plan at that time. And at the same time, we'll be notifying our continuing employees. They will have the option in the classified system. The state legislation requires us to hold a 90-day enrollment period that will run January to March of 2018. We'll provide for a reconsideration period for people who disagree with how their position was allocated, and then roll forward our A&P faculty and classified staff hired before July 1 of last year. They will come into the plan effective July 1 of 2018. So again, I say we're very excited about the opportunity to modernize our HR programs. As I've talked to groups, I think when I mentioned when I was here before, functioning under the state classified system, it's quite out of date. It's been in place for 50 to 100 years, depending on how far back you want to go. Being able to have something state-of-the-art and responsive for VCU that would align with the ambitions that we have to be a great public research university is really an exciting opportunity, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there questions for Susan? Bob?
Couple. The first is, I think overall we're moving absolutely in the right direction here. Two concerns. One is, heard a little bit from the definition of faculty, that we've gone from a very broad definition to something that is somewhat narrow in ways, I believe. And the group that I'm probably most concerned about is that we have some faculty, and I don't know if it's 5, 10, 15, who largely have what I would call public service responsibilities. They teach teachers out there. They may not be doing it through credit programs at VCU. They seem to me to be kind of faculty members. So what I'm hoping is that when you go through this review process, you have somewhat of an expansive notion of what a faculty member is. So if we have a person who is really heavily involved in our community outreach in what would really is somewhat instructional role, that person have that opportunity to have something other than an affiliate faculty record there and be considered a faculty member. The second issue is just to pick up on what we heard this morning, is to make it clear that classified staff, as I get it, have that opportunity of choosing whether they want to stay in this system or whether they want to leave that system. So if they stay in the system and there's a 3% statewide raise, they would still be eligible for that 3% statewide raise. So the point I would make there is that I think as you go through that process of working with our staff who have been tremendous for so many years with almost no raise for the last 5 or 6 years for many of them, that we make sure that they're given really the best information possible over that period as they're making this choice, because I think we want to make sure that this process fully respects them as they go about deciding where they want to be. And I would just try to emphasize that as you go forward with the implementation.
Thank you. Yes, we have very robust materials and resources that we're developing to go into that enrollment period. And if it wasn't the right thing to do and we would do anyway, I can tell you the state legislation requires that we provide side-by-side comparisons on every difference in policy between the two systems to help employees make the decision. So that's on our to-do list.
Other questions or comments?
I just wanted to mention that I'm proud of you for being able to put together such a major program and one that doesn't cost anything. It's going to break even and self-fund. So congratulations to you and the team.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
It is great work, Susan. Thank you very much. This does not require formal approval by this board, but certainly the positive comments reinforce support from this body for your work, and we look forward to progress reports as you implement. Thanks very much. Next item, we'll turn to a report of the Finance, Budget, and Investment Committee. Bill?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The committee's action items, which we recommend for full approval to the full board, include the proposed 2017-2018 tuition and fees and university budget plan. As a follow-up to our April 6th budget workshop meeting, the committee discussed the proposed budget and the associated tuition and fee rates. The committee approved the budget plan and tuition and fee rates as submitted by the staff and recommends approval to the full board. When I finish, Carol is going to give an overview of the plan so everybody will have a little better detail of what's in there. Dr. Wise also presented a 2018 through 2024 six-year capital plan, a review of the capital outlay priorities for the next 3 bienniums. The projects are segregated into those requesting state funding support and those funded with university funds. I think it's important that we do remember that we get a lot of state funding support for capital projects. It's not just tuition and that type of thing. I know I sometimes forget that. The projects will be revised in 2019 based on the new academic strategic plan and the new master site plan. We talked about that at our last meeting, that we're engaging a firm to come in and do another master site plan. So I think it's fair to say that the second 2 biennium information is really kind of more wish list, and we'll refine that later. We also looked at amendments to the previous 6-year capital plans. The Raleigh building renovation, which is in process right now, is in need of about $845,000 more. Whenever you get into an old building, you find some surprises, and sure enough, we have found some in terms of water damage and asbestos. So both of those things have to be fixed, so that is an overrun. Scott House renovation that we all know and love. Good news, bad news. 1910 historic building, that's the good news. The bad news is that it's in bad need of repair, especially the upper floors, which were never reconditioned when the bottom was. Many people don't know that. Total cost of that project is $7 million, and that will be split between us and the state. We looked at some other open session items. We were told about the notification of a contract award for the Allied Health and Professional Building. We got a very positive update on the new budget model. We got a very positive update on the Treasurer's report. Our money is being well kept, and we're actually beginning to earn some money, which is nice. We did not look specifically at the revenue and expense summary. That is in everybody's book. But Carol reported that everything is on track there. Same thing is true with the health system financial and operations report. Everything's on track there. Capital projects update and our dashboards, nothing that unusual in any of that. That's my report, Mr. Chairman, for the open session.
Thank you very much, Bill. Carol.
Okay. We had a meeting with the FBI, and I gave them a presentation both on the tuition fees and the recommended amount, as well as a comprehensive review of our fiscal year 17-18 budget, which includes the educational general program, sponsored projects, our research enterprise, excuse me, auxiliary enterprise, university funds, and hospital services. So this is a little bit of a backdrop. We recently received these two slides from SHEV, the State Council of Higher Education in Virginia, and I think it's important for the committee and the board to understand where Virginia ranks in support of higher education. So in 2015, the state of Virginia ranked 44th in their support of higher education, and they're investing much less per student than the national averages and much less in key states in which we compete for talent and we compare ourselves as peer institutions. So Virginia, in all of the schools that represent the Commonwealth, was 4,930, and if you want to compare it to Tennessee or Texas, 6,567, North Carolina, 8,109, and an example of that is the North Carolina system has a tuition rate of $8,300, where in 2015, VCU's tuition at that time was $12,398. In addition to what they gave us on the first slide, they also took a breakdown of how each of the schools within the Commonwealth compares to their peer institutions that they select. And you could see that the outliers are GMU, VCU, ODU, and Virginia Tech. So if you look at the last two on the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see that in comparison to the peer institutions selected by SHEV, VCU clearly remains underfunded. At the workshop that we attended in April, what I tried to do is gather the information to start establishing what the need base would be as we begin our fiscal year for 2017-18. And this is all educational general funds. We needed to recognize that we had unavoidable costs for contractual increases, operation and maintenance, fringe benefit, etc., of $5.3 million. In addition, we had made faculty promotions and an engineering startup of $3 million, giving us a start of unavoidable costs of 8.3. We were extremely mindful not to put any high priority needs that we didn't think we were going to be able to manage or afford. So we kept with the Quest, Virginia Merit and Quest-based financial aid of $2 million, which really represents the second and third year cohort. We increased our need-based financial aid by $3 million. We also wanted to provide funding for humanities and sciences for additional faculty of $1 million. And we had to recognize that the state is giving us a 3% salary and fringe benefit, 3% for classified, 2% for A&P and T&R, but at 3% in total is $12.2 million, as well as deferred maintenance that we're going to continue to try to support of $1 million. So when you take a look at what we consider true unavoidable and high priority needs, we're already starting with a need base of $27.6 million. We went back and we realigned our enrollment and adjusted it and benefited by a $4.2 million number to our favor, as well as some adjustments that were made for the 17-18 year of $3 million. We received $2 million for equity and access, and the university and state funding in total was $7 million. So the 27.6 was netted against the 16 to bring forward to you a $11 million gap for our needs and unavoidable costs. And this does not include the budget cut of $8 million. It also doesn't include initiatives that we need to recognize and need to decide how we're going to handle it as we go forward. But we had advising of 1.5, adjunct faculty pay, which I spoke about in the April meeting, of $1 million, recruitment and competitive pay of 2.8, additional deferred maintenance of 2.2 million, and financial aid mostly for our graduate assistantships, and the total is $8.8 million. And I think Keith had made some very good comments and questions, and I think we will go through this year looking at ways of becoming more efficient and ways of funding some of these initiatives. And he asked the question, which were our top priority, and I would say the first two are our top priority. Okay, so we brought this to the April workshop with a proposal for tuition increase and mandatory fee increase of 2.4 all the way to 5.3. We wrestled with these numbers and we wanted to make sure that we were in line with the other Virginia Commonwealth universities, and I can tell you the average is about 4.6 when we take all of the recommended tuition increases that we know about. So I'm recommending a balance of where we were of a 3.8% tuition and mandatory fee increase. It will generate $15 million. It will cover almost all of our preliminary funding gap of $11 million and the budget reduction of $8 million, but we'll leave a budget gap of $3.8 million, and it will be a $494 increase to our students for the entire academic year. Any questions? It's an easy group. And this is, I thought it was important to show the board what it looks like when you ask the question, what is the total cost of attendance? So if a student chooses to stay on campus and take advantage of our housing and board, an in-state student would be charged $23.8 for all of that, and $13,000 just for tuition and mandatory fees. And you can see that the university fee all the way down to the student activity fee did not receive any increases. We held them to the 16-17 rate. The only fee that was increased is a state requirement, and that's the capital outlay fee for our out-of-state students. So we are looking for the board to approve the increase of a 3.8 tuition and mandatory fee, and I'll give you a breakdown of the others, and a capital outlay fee, which is requirement of $35. For out-of-state students, thank you. And housing would be a modest 1.4 increase. Our dining is truly based on our Aramark contract of 2%, and the parking of 3% is within the 5-year financial plan that they presented a few years ago. And this is more detail for the tuition that we are recommending for 17-18. You can see the 3.8. When I say tuition and mandatory fees for our in-state students, a 4.2% increase for out-of-state undergraduates. We have an increase of 3.7 for our master level students, our out-of-state 4.1, and I will speak at a higher level for our professional schools. The School of Medicine and Dentistry and Pharmacy came to the University Budget Advisory Committee with these proposals. They were approved by all of the committee members, and they were really based on market-driven information so that we remain compatible with our peers.
Carol, thank you very much. I think everyone can see a good deal of very serious deliberation and analysis has gone into all of this. What you've seen today is very consistent with what Carol and others presented to this board back in April. It's very consistent with what you have reviewed and discussed with a variety of student groups. And it's now up to us to formally consider this recommendation, which has come from the Finance Committee.
Do you want to do both, Bill, the budget as well? Do you want to do a motion for both the budget and tuition, or do you want to do them separately?
Well, I think that's a good question. This is obviously the E and G budget,
Right.
Yes.
which has the primary impact on tuition. There is a whole host of other items that make up the entire budget. Maybe if you could go to that one slide there.
Okay. Just before I do that, if you don't mind, Bill, the 3.8 budget, a 3.8 increase will still leave the university, as I said earlier, with a $3.8 million budget cut. And you can see how that budget cut will be distributed based on units. And both the provost and the health sciences get the biggest chunk of the cut. Okay. I'm going to try to keep this at a high level for all of you, but we spend a lot of time talking about education in general. programs, and as Bill said, that number of total university sources under the first column includes my recommendation of a 3.8% increase for tuition and mandatory fees. What we don't report back to you is that we have a very robust sponsored program. I think we're ranked, if Frank's in the room, a 94%. We have $216 million projected for next year. Our auxiliary enterprise, which is made up or consists of athletics, parking and transportation, dining, housing, bookstore, etc. We're anticipating them to generate $148 million of revenues. Our university funds is from gifts and our investment income of $42 million. Our student financial aid, I will note that we do get $60 million of financial aid from the state and federal, but these numbers just represent what the university commitment is of $61.8 million. And the other of $67.4 million is predominantly from our relationship with the university hospital for reimbursement for services we provide. So in total, we're entering our 17-18 year with a total revenue of 1.2 and with a total budget projection of 1.2.
So Carol did take the FBI committee through more detail on each one of these columns, but we do recommend this entire budget to be full.
And this is just a pretty picture of how that $1.1 billion is made up of. And we spend most of our time, as I said earlier, 53% is coming from tuition and fees.
So those are the two big items before us today, this budget and the recommended tuition increase, which it would be very much integral to that. Are there questions? Please.
I'm sitting next to you like last time.
You know, a couple of things. First, the information piece. I think the total tuition increase is more than 4.5% because of the fact that we do have this is the last year of that kicker, as I assume, right? That,
the block grant.
well, what it is that when we made that 19% increase 4 years ago, we only applied it to incoming students. So we're getting that 4.5 tuition increase plus some dollars as well, and I think it's over 5% in total of institutional tuition there that you have right here.
I don't mean to disagree with you, but I don't know if that's correct. I think that the students who are still on the old tuition plan will recognize the tuition increase as well. Is that correct? Yes.
Oh, no, they'll recognize that, but this is the last year of the new group coming in, right?
Yes, they're grandfathering out, yes.
Right, so you have that new group that's coming in at sort of a higher rate there. Your total tuition in dollars are about 5% when you look at your data here.
If you want to separate out the fees to the tuition, we were going to 4.5% tuition increase.
Yeah, but the dollars that the institution will get from tuition is what? Is the percentage is higher than 5% in the data that you provided us?
On total tuition?
Yeah.
Is that the C&G here? This 424 is pretty much everything. It includes in-state, out-of-state, the fees that we propose for our professional students as well as our undergraduate for both the old method and the new method per credit hour.
Right, and at the end it's 5.8%.
Yes, and that's because we've had a higher increase for our professional students and of the students that remain on the old plan. So it's 5.8%, but it's a conglomeration of out-of-state students, our professional students, our master students.
Well, I understand that, but that's the total amount.
But I would not use
institutional increase, not the increase that will affect every individual student.
But it's related to dollars, not fee.
The second point that I'm concerned about is that there hasn't been a slide in either presentation that deals with student debt. And you know, last year Luke came in when he was here and said we were reducing student debt. And from what I could see from the Institute of College Success, we now have the largest student debt of any public university in Virginia. And that's my concern, is that we really haven't taken many steps to actually reduce it, though we said we were. And I believe that the universities that have undergraduate student mix that kind of resembles ours in terms of Pell Grants and the like have really done a better job of affordability. And my concern is that we're raising student debt, and at the end of the day, we're simply losing VCU's historical commitment to affordability. So I think we're doing a lot of good things. I don't want to downplay any of the great initiatives we have and how wonderful this university is in so many ways. But I am concerned that we're raising tuition without even mentioning student debt, and that secondly, we are, I think, at the end of the day, losing our commitment to affordability compared to some of the other universities in Virginia.
I guess I would take a little issue with that, because if you look at what part of the increase is, it's $2 million to continue to fund some of the scholarships, and then it's another $3 million to offer more scholarships. So I mean, that's $5 million that is helping some number of students have less student debt. Now, you know, it just is. I mean, that much money they will not have to pay. So whether they would have borrowed it or whatever, I mean, maybe it's a stretch, but I think we are doing at least something to it.
But we have 32, you know, from what I gather from the Institute of College Success and Access, we have $32,000 in 2015, $32,500 of average student debt, that 65% of our students have that debt, and that according to all the institutions but one that reported, that's the highest in Virginia.
And do you know, is that student debt based on what they actually paid to the university, or does that include what they may pay for off-campus housing? And I mean, I had student debt, but I used some of that student debt to live off, to eat, and all those kinds of things. So I mean, there's only so much we can do to affect student debt. You know, we control a piece of that, but we don't control it all.
Can I mention, Bob, I understand what you're saying about the student debt, because I don't think anyone wants to see our student debt to go higher. This proposal was, I consider, extremely reasonable in recognition of the state mandate of a salary increase of 3%, as well as trying to address the need in humanities and the College of Humanities and Sciences. And I don't think that VCU is funded as well as our Tier 3 institutions. And I do believe if we don't fund this institution, our students that we really care about are not getting the quality of education that they deserve. And that's why we try to manage your issue of debt with a reasonable proposal that we think that the students can afford.
Carol, and I think that's an excellent point. I think, Bob, your point is well made. We do need to be focused on the student debt, be sure that everyone is looking at that. But one thing that I can assure you from, at least from my perch, is that tremendous focus has gone into reining in costs and identifying ways we can cut that further. We're going to be looking very hard at strategy and the influence of that. That's all very much a part of the mix. Affordability is a critical part of the overall mission of this university. But Carol hit it just a moment ago, and this subject was raised by one of our colleagues during the FBI committee today. Do we need to go higher to ensure that the students who are here today are getting the absolute best quality? And I think that's the balance that we're all wrestling with. We want to keep tuition as tight as we possibly can, but as we move through this transformative period, there are going to be some modest dislocation, and Carol is on that and doing a great job leading it for us.
Bob, can I ask you the resources you were looking at? Did that include medical and
No, it's undergraduate,
Right.
Undergraduate public university student debt. And it's a national group that's been looking at this for years. I'll send the website to you.
Rick.
So I suspect this conversation goes on in most college boards at this time of year. And it, you know, I think it's probably a little frustrating that every year we end up and something comes up, you know, and I mean, not that we shouldn't be doing salary increases, but that's a lot of money to fund. And something in me says it would be nice to step back and look at this, even if not on a committed basis, on two things. First of all, over longer term, and then second of all, asking ourselves, what tuition increase policy would we like to have over the long term? Would we like to have no increase? Would we like to have general inflation? Would we like to have inflation plus 2%? But have a discussion around what we think would be a desirable policy, and then try to think about, okay, let's take a 5-year glide path. If we wanted to get to that over 5 years, what kind of stuff would we be needing to do? And again, per the conversation we had at the AHAC meeting this morning, if we had 600 more full-paying students, you know, one thing you could have done was have no increase this year. So I think if we open up, if we can look at it longer term and have a strategic objective we all agree we're shooting for, it will open up options for us to pursue to try to get at this more constructively than, again, I'm not critical of what we're doing here because I think everybody does it, but you get into, and you've got a 1-year cycle to fix, the options are limited. If we look at it, try to figure out where we want to go and get a glide path to get there, I suspect we'll come up with more palatable options than we are left with in this process.
I could not agree more, and I think one of the things that been instructive for me, and I'm going to be generalized with the numbers, but over the last several years, it's interesting that when you do the math, the increase in tuition almost mirrors exactly the cut from the state support. But I think one of the things that we have got to do, and there's a strong focus on this, is to look very hard at what that philosophy should be and what a plan should be, and not be held hostage, if you will, to the process of waiting to see what the state does in any given year. And I think it's vitally important for us to plan our course of action and then benefit from what the state does, hopefully, but not have our decisions be solely based on that, because that does leave this institution in that 1 year. And I think we're already, the work that you're seeing reflected in Carol's and Bill's comments is already a reflection of that. But I could not agree more. I think that this board overall should have that philosophical conversation, absent having to decide on the numbers.
And Rick, the leadership here, Gail and Marsha, all are very sensitive to the need to grow revenues by being more entrepreneurial, a robust summer session, an online education, pushing our out-of-state enrollment up a little bit to generate more revenue, to be mindful of keeping the tuition increases as low as possible.
John,
yes, sir.
I have a comment. I have listened to you quite carefully, and you have presented it very well, and I can see the justification for this fee increase, especially in the light of the budget reduction from the state. But it's also interesting to just note the recent news from New York State. I don't know how they can afford to do what they are planning to do as far as
As a former resident of New York, I don't know how New York does a lot of things that it does, but I'm not convinced that their model is one to follow.
No, I know that. What I'm saying, I don't know whether a lot of students might compare that, and
right.
You know, that's what I'm saying.
Agreed.
But I'm not against what you're saying. Your justification is absolutely logical, and I understand that.
Thank you very much.
And, you know, I might just echo that I think one of the things that we have been talking about in committee meetings and all is that this board can take a role in really being proactive at looking at what are the kinds of issues that higher education is facing, and where are there people out there who are doing a really good job of dealing with it, and can we maybe bring them in as resources and learn from them. And I think over the next year, you know, we'll be focusing on there's a lot of talent on this board, and I don't think there's a single person on this board that isn't committed to the idea of trying to have some long-term planning and goals and trying to find a way to keep the tuition down as much as possible. So I think we really have some real challenges and opportunities ahead in trying to do that, and a very cohesive board that wants that to happen, as well as an administration that wants it to happen.
In academic and health this morning, we heard a great presentation on where we were on the strategic plan. But it dealt very much with the internals of the organization and, you know, what kind of students we wanted to have, what kind of preparation we wanted to be able to give them, and all those kinds of things. I said then what was missing, and I think what we have to have, and I think this gets to probably Bob's point and also Dick's point, we need a business strategic plan that parallels that academic strategic plan that, as Rick says, sets some goals down the road that's more than just year to year, and looks at what are our opportunities for income increases, what are our opportunities for cost cutting, and all those kinds of things, so that we are going hand in hand as we go down the road. So I would urge again that as we look at, you know, going into next year, we you know, make that perhaps one of the things that the finance group does.
Great.
John,
Steve.
I was wondering what you think the likelihood is that we could get the state of Virginia to commit on a long term being 3 to 5 years. Is it realistic that they would commit to that?
You know, you're raising a good question. It's one that I think is very important. I'm the last person in the room to make political prognostications, but I think Matt and I met with Tommy Norman, who's our majority leader, head of the Finance Committee, and we were talking about some other initiatives. But we used the opportunity to raise that very question and talking about a more strategic approach to funding, and that was received very positively. Now, that's one person, but it's one very influential person, and I think it's important as we are ready here to put together a package of comments and continue to go back to the General Assembly. Thank you. Other questions or comments? Yes, Keith.
Just a comment, and I'm extremely sensitive to the issue that Bob raises, but I go back to a chart that Carol shared with us that compares Virginia institutions with other similar colleges around the country, and how Virginia, including Virginia universities, including VCU, are significantly lower in cost as compared to their peers. I don't know if you have it in this, right there. One more. Right there. That shows that the Virginia colleges, and VCU fits into that realm of schools that's lower cost than their peer institutions. And while I think there's always opportunity to get a bit more efficient, it doesn't appear to be that our problem is an expenditure problem from the university side. Then I would add to it something that Dr. Rao talks about a great deal, and that is that VCU is the home of a tremendous number of first-generation students. First-generation students tend to have parents who don't have a ton of money necessarily to pour towards writing checks the way many other universities like the UVAs and the William & Marys, where many of the parents are writing bigger checks to make sure that their students don't have significant debt. So I guess what I'm getting at is I think the role we play within the state is a large reason, a big part of the reason why we have students who have significant debt when they leave here. They aren't necessarily poor students who can't afford some level, but they're not students who are going to qualify for the highest level of Pell Grants and the highest levels of other types of resources. So I think we still try to come at this at all different angles, but I don't believe this is necessarily a failure of the administration in getting things done as to why that debt level is where it is.
Thank you. Other comments? Yes, Ron.
I just want I don't want to nitpick. I don't ask one question though. I see that we're off about 4 million in student, looks like housing, dining, from budget year to budget year. What do you account?
The Gladding residential facility came down, and I think we lost how many students? How many? 1,500 students were displaced, so they don't take advantage of housing, nor do they take advantage of the meal plan.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, if we could then formally consider the budget and the tuition increase as two items in one, I would appreciate that. Do we have a motion to approve? Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. So noted. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very
Carol,
much.
thank you very much for your excellent work. Meredith, our 6-year capital plan. Did she leave?
No, she wasn't going to do it.
Oh, she's not going to do it?
No, it was just to move.
Okay, so, okay. There we go.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine.
The material
No,
is in the board book.
Understand. So, Bill, you teed that up earlier. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I don't.
Okay, we've got, everyone's had an opportunity to look at it in the board book. We'd be happy to review any specifics, but as Mike noted in his comments and Bill did earlier, it is a very disciplined, very sound look at the coming 6 years, and certainly is very much in accord with the strategies that we have. We've got that, and Bill also referenced as part of that the amendment to the 6-year plan, current 6-year plan, to include the Raleigh building renovation and Scott House renovation. So if we could consider the 6-year plan and those amendments as one item, I would appreciate it.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. We will now turn to the School of Arts in Qatar. We have a presentation. And Mike or James, are you going to provide the introduction of the Dean?
I'd be happy to. So I was just with Dr. Akel Kahera last week when we were together for commencement in Qatar, and then the day that followed, we spent pretty much, or at least I spent most of the day with the royal family that continues to be the overseers of the Qatar Foundation, which is the funder of our effort in the international space in the Middle East. And Dr. Kahera has now been with us for 2 years, and he is continuing to put his administrative infrastructure in place, and had an opportunity to visit with him and as a number of people who are on his team, and certainly my faculty colleagues who are over there, and certainly all of our graduates who I got a chance to see at the commencement ceremony. So he is going to give us a brief update on VCU School of the Arts in Qatar, and we welcome him here from Qatar, and then he'll join us for commencement tomorrow as well.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. Colleagues, I'm delighted to be here with you today. I thought I would segue into my presentation by giving a very brief overview of the history of our institution in Qatar. I don't know how many of you have been to Doha or are familiar with that history, so if you would indulge me for a minute while I just give a brief overview before we get into more specifics of the school. VCU has been in Qatar since 1998. The Qatar Foundation, who is responsible for Education City, which houses 6 American institution, but VCU has been there since 1998. It began with a small cohort of 34 students. The other institutions that came later are Cornell University, Texas A&M, Carnegie Mellon, Georgetown University, and most recently, Northwestern University. So in a year from now, we will have been in Qatar for 20 years. We're the oldest institution in Education City. Education City itself is a campus of 14 square kilometers, about 5 square miles. The institutions are all supported by the Qatar Foundation, which, as I mentioned earlier, came into existence in 1997 through a royal decree. His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Hamid bin Khalifa, and his wife, Sheikh Moza bin Nasser. Altogether, these institutions are funded from the revenues of the foundation, and with a total budget annually of about $500 to $600 million. VCU's share of that amount is averaging about $40 million per year. Qatar is a very unique environment. From the point of view of economics, it is the richest country in terms of its per capita income. There's a very small population in terms of the Qataris themselves, only about 300,000 people, but the total population of Qatar is about 2.5 million. In 2022, as you all may be familiar with the forthcoming World Cup, Qatar will be the first Arab country to host the FIFA World Cup. So as you can imagine, at the moment, there are a lot of construction going on. It's quite active in terms of its commitment and its investment in that event. That, in many ways, provides some opportunities for our students. We are engaged with the plans to host the World Cups. And as you know, our school there, which is based on programs that are housed in the School of the Arts here in Richmond. We have 5 undergraduate programs: graphic design, interior design, painting and printmaking, art history, and fashion. And we have 1 graduate program, which is a Master of Design in Design Studies. So those fields that I mentioned lend themselves very easily to sort of the branding of the foundation, the branding of these events, and our students have a unique opportunity to engage in sort of the pre-professional and post-professional opportunities that present themselves through the heavy investment that the country has made with the World Cup and other similar events. You see here an opportunity we had when Dr. Rao visited us about a year ago to meet with some of the local Qatari businessmen, many of whom who have their daughters and sons who attend VCU and have a vested interest in the success of the school. And they find opportunities to engage with us, to support our students. One of the gentlemen here has been funding us to the tune of $50,000 a year, Mr. Ibrahim Jada, who sits to my far left, himself an architect, but he sponsors a scholarship for 4 students who are in the interior design program and in the graphic design program. That is just one example of the kind of local commitment that we have from Qatari citizens. Again, we...
Can you clarify that those glasses have grape juice in them?
Yes.
That sounds after
It is all halal. It is all halal. Halal in Arabic means it's non-alcoholic. Right. So we were all coherent.
And the food was all halal as well.
So as I was saying, we are excited by the fact that the school, VCU, has a long-lasting recognition. They have a lot of respect for us. And so these local businessmen have taken advantage of that opportunity to support us in many ways. I think someone mentioned earlier the fashion show of students coming here at the VMA, but we also do a reciprocal arrangement. We take students from VCU to Qatar annually for the fashion show. Incidentally, the head of our fashion program, Sandy Wilkins, has been in Qatar for 18 years. She's been there since the beginning. She's not the only one. So that is an indication of the kind of commitment that faculty members have made to the success of the institution. If we look at the breakdown of our faculty, staff, and students on the left, 64% of our faculty come from North America. Many come from the home campus here at Richmond. In addition to Asia, Europe, and the MENA region, which is Middle East and North Africa. But clearly, the vast majority of our faculty members are from the United States. And we try to recruit very heavily here from the home campus, and most specifically from the School of the Arts as well. The ratio of female to male, about 54 to 46%. In terms of staff, the vast majority of our staff come from the Asia-Pacific region, and that's followed by 39%, which come from the MENA region. And there with staff, we have a huge percentage of female versus male. In terms of the composition of the enrolled students, we have done exceedingly well. Part of the operating agreement with the Qatar Foundation is to have a cohort of 70% Qatari. We have 61%, and of all those 6 institutions I mentioned, we have the highest percentage of Qatari students. We also have the highest percentage of female students, which is 91%. As I listen to the conversation of the board, I want to emphasize that part of our mission is to remain aligned with the home campus in many of the initiatives, our strategic plan. We have a joint advisory board which provides oversight, and 3 of the members of that board come from the home campus here. Provost Hackett, Brian Shaw, and Interim Dean James Fraser, whom are 3 members of the 9-member Joint Advisory Board. They help us to carve out some of the mission and the vision and the values that you see highlighted here. We want to make sure that we remain successful, we meet accreditation standards, and incidentally, our campus in Qatar is the only NASAD-accredited school in the Middle East. So that gives us a clear advantage over many of the other schools that are in the region. In addition to that, we are very committed to the success of some of these values and visions that we see highlighted here. And so we use the board as a way to engage in what I describe as shared governance. In other words, to seek from their collective experience and knowledge so that our institution remains a first-class place of education. And when we do reapply for SACS accreditation, NASAD, and so on, we're not encountering any sort of serious challenges. And that has worked quite successfully for us. The Joint Advisory Board meets twice a year in November and in March, and usually that meeting takes up only a day, but we bring in the members and we have very robust discussions on some of the challenges and things that we want to see implemented. Just a quick overview of the breakdown of our graduates over the 20-year period. Well, actually ended up to 2017. We have graduated 625 students, and the chart on the right shows a brief summary of where that cohort has, basically that pie chart shows how that number is distributed. So graphic design, 29%, fashion, 29%, art history is a new program which began in 2012, so that's why the number is so small. Painting and printmaking, likewise, a later addition, and interior design, 18%. Enrollment, as you can see, has been steadily increasing. We get about 900 applicants every year for only 100 positions. So that's indicative of how highly respected the school is. And so the challenge for me is often, how do I explain to parents why their kids didn't get accepted? Because everyone wants to come to VCU, Qatar. Nevertheless, the enrollment has been steadily growing, roughly at an average of 10% per year. We're now at 363 students. We expect that that number will remain pretty much the same for the next year. So for the fall of 2017, we have 122 students who will be coming to the school. Next. The ecosystem of the Qatar Foundation involves research. There are three principles of the Qatar Foundation. One is health and science, education, and community development. And if you look at the list of organizations that fall under the auspices of the foundations, you could see there the main core, which is the 6 American schools, 2 European schools, UCL of London, HEC of Paris. Then they also have several research institutes. They're looking at energy, health. They hold the World Innovation Summit for Health, which Dr. Rapley attended. They also hold the World Innovation Summit for Education, which will take place in November. So there are a number of global initiatives, and this provides tremendous opportunity for us here at the home campus to engage in some of these types of programs. And in essence, science, funding, research, the foundation commits about $600 million a year to STEM and non-STEM research initiatives. Our school participate in some of these initiatives, and this year, I think we submitted a grant request of over $5 million. The Education City, as I mentioned, is about 5 square miles, pretty dense, and we share this campus with the other institutions, Cornell, Texas, Carnegie Mellon, Northwestern, etc. So all in all, I know this is a very quick overview, but I think that we're doing exceedingly well. There's no exaggeration that I think you all would agree with me that we've done a great job over the last 20 years, and I'm happy to play this role as dean and to continue some of the very robust initiatives of Virginia Commonwealth University. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, questions?
Are there questions? You've answered them all. I'm sure there will be over time, but congratulations and thank you very much. Carol, Academic and Health Affairs, your report. You're going to have some help? Oh, Gail's going to do it? Okay. Oh, that's right.
Carol has lost her voice.
Okay.
So I'm giving the report. The committee had 3 consent agenda items. So the committee recommends the approval of 2 PhD program proposals from the School of Engineering, the PhD in Chemical and Life Sciences Engineering, and the other one with the School of Pharmacy, the PhD in Pharmaceutical Engineering, which actually is the first PhD program in the country. The third item on the consent agenda was a simple name change from the Center for Teaching Excellence to the Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence. Other information items included Chuck Klink gave us an update on a recent student climate survey. Our students actually were very happy, recognized our strong institutional commitment to diversity. Doesn't mean we don't have more to do, but students' responses were very positive. We had a brief report on what Purdue University is doing to be able to have a tuition freeze, which is basically over half of their students at their flagship campus are from out-of-state or international students. We did have a brief report on the iCubed initiative, the Institute for Inclusion, Inquiry, and Innovation, which is our faculty retention, recruitment and retention initiative, which is going very well, and we'll have more for you in the fall about that. The planning for the next strategic plan is going well as well. Carol Shapiro and Jackie Stone are members of the steering committee for the strategic planning effort. Deborah Noble-Triplett gave an update on the planning for the real-world experience, which is now being called the Relevant, Experiential, and Applied Learning Experience, or REAL, the acronym. Frank Macrina and Garrett Westlake gave a presentation on Venture Creation University, the mechanism where students and faculty from all academic disciplines at VCU can launch innovative ideas and products. And finally, we heard from faculty, staff, and student representatives about their ongoing work, and the president has acknowledged them, and we also thank June Nicholson, Holly Alford, Sonia Markosha, Ellen Booth, and Elizabeth Winslow for their great work.
Thank you very much, Gail and Carol. Questions on the committee's report or work? If not, Gail mentioned we have 3 action items, the approval of 2 new programs and a name change. Have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Thank you both very much. Audit, integrity, and compliance, Mr. Worley.
Thank you, Mr. Director. The Audit, Compliance, and Integrity Committee had a very full agenda with 8 open items on the agenda, including 3 action items for the board's approval. Karen Helderman, the Audit Director with the state for the Auditor of Public Accounts, discussed the planning and timing and scope for the fiscal year 17 financial audit. Fiscal year 17 ends at the end of June, and so they're getting their preliminary work done now. And they hope to have the audit completed partially or significantly, but not completely in December, but with the last piece being finished in January. Next, the committee reviewed the current status of the dashboard measures, which remain consistent with the prior period. The committee received the results from the 2017 Integrity Appliance Culture Survey, which focused on integrity and compliance issues, as well as awareness of available resources and willingness to report known or suspected misconduct. The Culture Survey report includes a full analysis of this year's data with benchmarking of data from previous surveys. This year, there was an increase in the number of employees participating, and the results showed positive trend in their responses on ethical and compliance issues and university resources. The committee heard an update on the Data of Information Management Council activities, which included a discussion of the progress made by the 4 task forces, technology infrastructure, and data management strategy. The action items included the annual review of the committee charter and meeting planner, which included some minor changes, the annual audit work plan, and the plan compliance initiatives. All these actions were reviewed and discussed by the committee and recommended for the board's approval. Therefore, on behalf of the Audit, Integrity, and Compliance Committee, I make a motion for the approval of the committee charter and meeting planner, the proposed fiscal 2018 audit work plan, and the proposed ethics and compliance programs initiatives. And that completes my report.
Thank you very much. We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Thank you very much. Governance and compensation, Ms. Hall.
Met this morning, and Ms. Schumacher provided the committee with the committee charter, the meeting planner, and committee dashboard, and reviewed the proposed changes. They put so much work into this. It was really a helpful review and presentation. These documents will be presented to the full board at the September meeting, and this concludes my open session report.
Thank you very much. University Resources, Rick.
Thank you, John. Happy to report on behalf of the committee. In the open session, we had our government relations update from Matt Conrad and Kara Gunther. Items covered included the update on our outreach efforts regarding the American Health Care Act in DC and the potential implications for us and our efforts to try to provide constructive input to that. At the state level, I think Bill mentioned the fact that Matt had done a terrific job in getting the contribution of the state to the renovation of the Scott House, which was the only such item included, I guess, in the governor's post-budget actions or final budget actions or whatever. And then also, very interestingly and important, next week, May 15th, VCU leadership will host leadership from the mayor's administration for the first time ever joint summit to talk about mutual opportunities, which seems like a very good initiative on behalf of Mike and his team. University Relations, Pam Lepley updated us on a number of communication issues. Impressive numbers in media coverage that we're continuing to receive, particularly noteworthy paid media success. Some of this is around, for example, our efforts to attract student advertising, and in some areas we are achieving 7 times the industry standard on click-through. So it appears we're doing quite a good job in that area. And Pam also highlighted the efforts she and her team are making in the supporting a number of the strategic initiatives that are ongoing here at the university and trying to help to make sure we have a coordinated communication plan around those many things, including the HR and budget redesigns, which we know about, the master plans for the university and the health system, the various executive communications, and the, as Pam deemed it, request or the redo of the strategic plan. I thought that was pretty good. Finally, in development and alumni relations, Ed Greer, who I think many of you know, has swapped hats from being the Dean of the Business School to being the acting VP of this space. Thank you for doing that, Ed. Really appreciate it. He gave us a good update on activities in his area, informing us that the search for the new vice president is well underway, and without breaking confidentiality, people are pleased at the first round candidate interviews. We also have a search going on for the Assistant Vice President of Alumni Affairs, and we were updated briefly on the work that's going on to make sure we are visioning the opportunities in dealing with our alumni as broadly and modernly as possible. We've had a good traditional program, but we think there's opportunities to expand that in a number of ways. There's also a search going on for the Chief Development Officer for the Med Center. Mike reported on the highlights of the campaign so far, including that we expect to hit $500 million out of our $750 goal by June 30th. Just a couple of other points that is interesting. Alumni giving continues to be at impressive records. 6% of alums, 11,000 alums making new gifts is up 16% over this time last year, and we had a good increase last year, so this has been a nice initiative. Almost 85,000 donors so far of the Make It Real campaign. I think interestingly, over 200 new endowed scholarship and student support funds, 49 new endowed professors, a lot of good work going, and also I think we were reassured as to the process, work on making sure we have adequate efforts in the pipeline. For example, we were told that we have about $35 million of requests currently, of asks of $100,000 or more in the pipeline for the next several months. And so it's these kind of actions that will keep us ahead of that target line that Mike mentioned. I think that concludes the major topics for the open session.
Great, thank you very much. Are there questions of Rick on anything he covered? If not, unless anybody has anything else, we will transition to closed session. And with that in mind, I move that the Board of Visitors of Virginia Commonwealth University convene a closed session under sections 2.2-3711A, 1, 2, 3, and 8 of the Freedom of Information Act for the discussion of personnel matters, more specifically relating to the performance evaluation and/or compensation of the President of Virginia Commonwealth University and various faculty members, and the evaluation of performance of certain departments of Virginia Commonwealth University, which will require performance evaluations of specific individuals in those departments. The appointment of student representatives that involve the disclosure of information contained in a scholastic record, the acquisition of real property for a public purpose, or the disposition of publicly held real property, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the university, and for the discussion of gifts, bequests, and fundraising activities of Virginia Commonwealth University, namely the named funds and spaces report and the approved named funds under $50,000 report. I think the closed session will probably be shorter than the time it took me to read